Well, here we are once again out in the field, 90-degree weather.
Because we just can't get our act together earlier in the day. You ever feel like that? Oh my gosh. No, we had a bunch of other stuff we were doing earlier, but we are continuing our electric fencing on the bottom of our perimeter fence. We're setting up high tensile wire, some strands along the bottom of our exterior established barbed wire fence.
To contain the sheep and the dogs, mainly.
Right, and keep predators out, but our dogs do a good job of that. But it's mainly to also keep our dogs in, and then to be able to have bigger paddocks for our sheep. So like the way that our barbed wire fence was set up, the last barbed wire strand on the bottom was high enough above the ground that our sheep would just slip underneath it and go out of our property. And so every time we had to set up our sheep near our fence line, we would have to set up an additional
Fence along the barbed wire fence.
an additional netting fence along the barbed wire fence. We'd have to set it in a little bit so it didn't ground out on the barbed wire fence, and if anything hit it, it could also damage the net because the barbed wire could get caught in it. And it was just a lot of like wasted energy, and you know, you're setting up a whole fence along another fence, and then
you're losing all that fence line.
Right, and we weren't able to
grazing area.
So. Right. So they couldn't graze up to the fence, keep it clean, and it just was a pain. So, and it was hard to do it because up until this year, we had a lot of brush and stuff that was growing in along the fence line. So we hired a couple of guys to come in with a forestry mulcher and mulch down our fence lines and keep them clear and clear any like trees that were growing over it. And they did a great job. Are you happy with it?
Yes.
Okay, so we got a couple guys that came and mulched it, but in Missouri here we've had a lot of rain and it's already starting to grow back. Like, so we planted some seed, or you planted some seed in the area that was mulched to make sure that we had more grass growing in that area, and it's been great. But we want our sheep to be able to graze right up against the fence line, keep it clear, and that electric high tensile wire, our hope was that we would be able to do it with just running a couple of strands. However, we're kind of new. Like, that's the whole point of this channel, is like we came and started with no experience, and we don't have a lot of tools, and it can get kind of expensive to put in, you know, different fencing. And so we thought we would try out these lockjaw clips to set up high tensile wire like right along the bottom there. And how's it been working out?
So far, it seems to be working good.
Yeah.
We just, that area we just did seemed to contain them nicely, and they grazed right up to it and cleared everything. It's nice.
Yep. And it wasn't that long. It doesn't take that long to set it up.
No.
The lock jaws are easy to like clip on, and if you have to move them for some reason, they're pretty easy to get off, and you don't have to take all the wire down. It's we've tried other things, and these have been the easiest so far. So, and they're also fairly inexpensive. They're not super expensive, so it's something you can pick up a few.
It was like 25 clips for like $10.
Like $12. I think it's $12 for 25 clips where we are. And then we got some high tensile wire. We use the 14 gauge wire, and that's it. So we just have the lockjaw clips, the 14 gauge wire, and then a wire cutter, right? And that's what we used. So I'm going to show you the paddock that they're going into. Keep in mind that some of this area had some trees that were growing here before, and so the pasture that's coming in is a little thinner than we hope for the future, and our cows just came through this area. So this is an area that our cows have been through and that we more recently planted seed. And then I'm going to show you where the sheep have been over the last week so that you can see how much they will graze it down. We have about 30 sheep. They're a little less than 30, and some of them are little, but they keep an area pretty clean. If we didn't do this the way we would have to actually set up a paddock and then ideally another paddock and move them to those two paddocks each day to be able to have enough for them to graze. So this also gives us that additional fence line, gives us almost like a whole other polywire
So you get a lot more
fence.
square
They get a lot
footage.
more square footage to graze in. So this has been working out for us, but I'm going to kind of show it to you. Remember, we're not perfect. We've never done this before. We're setting up a few sections at a time that are a few 100 feet long, because I work full time. We have 6 little kids we're taking care of in homeschooling, and so sometimes you have to figure out a way that if you can't do this enormous project that's overwhelming, do a little bit at a time,
Yep.
and then you get it done.
Well,
So
you're making it easier down the road.
right. So our hope is that within the next couple of days we will have finished our high tinsel wire fencing in our lane, or on one side of our lane, and then we will have finished our high tinsel wire on our
Barbed wire fence line.
barbed wire fence line, or at least a substantial portion of it. And so that should help us going forward. We won't have to keep resetting up along the fence line in the future. So let me show you what we've got. Okay, so you can see our cows are here in the paddock right next to where our sheep are. So our sheep are now following directly behind our cows. Our cows were in this paddock yesterday, and they grazed it pretty. Now keep in mind also, like, our cows are really intensively grazing these areas, so they're grazing them down quite a bit. We probably have more cows than we should for the land that we have, and we're making plans for that for the future, but everybody's still doing good as of right now. But they will not eat, the cows will not eat these things. Can you show them what they are? So these are like multiflora rose bushes. They got lots of thorns on them, and they will grow quickly and kind of create a jumbled mess in your pasture.
This isn't the multiflora.
Oh, what's that?
Oh.
Well,
There's no thorns on this.
well, we do have that as well, which they will eat down. And then these, actually, I'm not sure what these are, but these will also turn into like a big mess like that. And so the sheep will come right in here, and they will eat all those down. You can't really see them. But see, the cows will leave these alone, but the sheep won't. So we're just going to kind of show you where they've been over the last week. Keep in mind, we've been letting them graze down further than we ideally would like for them, because we're clearing fence lines. And so, but this is one day that they grazed in this area. And this whole area, before we had the forestry mulcher come through, was pretty, these are all pretty overgrown. They know the drill. Come on, girls. So they'll come in and they'll have this whole area. And they just grazed this. So they'll go right up to the fence lines. They'll keep them clean. You can see that they did that here, and that this whole paddock is grazed down so that we can reseed it and keep our fence lines nice and clean. So to kind of illustrate, this whole area beyond the fence line is a little bit more grown out than what ours was, but it very easily could become that if we were not keeping it cleaned up. And so the sheep are helping with that, and they will clear all the shrubs around the trees. Now, if we didn't rotationally graze and we just let our sheep out onto the pasture to move wherever they wanted to, what they would do is kind of what they're doing right now, where they will go and they will find all the stuff they like the best. They will get all the most tender, leaves, and then they will go and they will graze those things first, and then they'll keep moving through the field until they find only their favorites. And so they would not necessarily naturally graze down the less desirable species, but this gets them to do that, and helps manage our pasture a little bit better. Like I said, these paddocks are a little bit overgrazed for what we'd like, but our hope is that to create a system where they are able to have bigger paddocks so that they're not as likely to do that. How you doing, Mama? Now she is still nursing this baby that's almost as big as she is. We're going to be separating them soon. She had twins this year, and although when you first move them, if they're coming off of a paddock that they've pretty much cleaned out, she'll look nice and fat and round by the end of the day. And they don't receive any grain. These are those rose bushes that I was talking about. So this was totally covered leaves, and then so they will come through here and they'll eat all of this down, graze all the leaves, and then we can pull that up out of our field. Okay, so I'm going to show you a little bit about what they've done over the last week to help clear these lines. Aside from the fact that they are fertilizing everywhere that they are. Okay, so they're coming from here. This is where they've gone. This was 1 day ago. They cleared all into that woods area. So now we can come in there. We can clean up any branches, small trees that we want to get out of there. We can trim up the trees to the height that we want them to for the future. And they just kind of made that easier for us. And they ate all of the anything that was green. Oh, this is what's left of. This is how they leave that we were talking about, those little shrubby things. And you can see, like, so this was all covered in leaves, and they went and they cleaned all that up. Okay. This is where they were before that. Like I said, this is like more grazed than we typically do, just because we're trying to work on these tree lines and fence lines, and so we let them go down a bit farther than we normally would. You can see they cleared all into the woods. So now if we go in and we trim up our branches and get rid of all those little trees and things, and this will be, we have the ability to plant more seeds there and work in that space. This was 3 days ago. You can see that it's starting to green up just a little bit more. This was 4 days. And then this is where you'll start to see it really start to grow at 4 or 5 days in. They definitely brought it down lower, so I keep reiterating this. This is not what we strive for in every paddock. But if you need to clear out areas so that you can work on them, they definitely are helpful. So we came through the woods here, and I'll show you the other side. Okay, this is around the 5 or 6 day mark. This is starting to come back. And then you can start to see this is about a week from where we left them. Now I would never bring them back into an area like this after a week, but you can see that what looks like there's nothing left really does recover fairly quickly. And I will show you where they were 2 weeks ago, so that you can kind of get a sense of how long it takes for it to recover from them grazing it all the way down. So this is about 2 weeks afterwards. And this is where the cows were. You can see the line from where the sheep were. And they were actually here less than 3 weeks ago. So you can tell from the areas that they grazed all the things up to the fences, but they were in here about less than 3 weeks ago, and I'll show you where our pastures are. After they've been someplace for between 3 weeks and a month. Okay, so this is where they were between 3 weeks and a month ago. And we grazed them down our lane and mowed our lane. So this has been mowed, but obviously this has not been. And then this is our hayfield. So within a month, we grazed them all the way up here, around our fence lines, all the way down to where they are, around the trees, and then now up to where they are in our paddock that's on the other side. And they will probably have another couple of weeks at least along that fence line before we move them to a different section. So just to give you an illustration of what your sheep can do for you as far as putting them to work, and this has been really helpful to us. So when we set up that fence line, it just gives us bigger paddocks so they don't have to graze it down so far. And just also for us to remember where we are at in the fall of the summer of 2024. This is June 2024 on our farm. So I hope that helps. We will update you and let you know how that continues to work out with the lockjaws and with the high tensile wire fencing, if that actually keeps them in and works out better for us. And we'll update you as time goes on and let you know what's working out here.
I think it's gonna be good.
So like, subscribe, and share to Full and Family Farm. Follow the adventures of our family of 8 that moved cross country to the Missouri Ozarks to start a farm with no farming experience. If we can do it, you can do it too.